Hey guys, this is the Mini Crayfish. I had this out the other day and just absolutely crushed the smallmouth and the walleye. I think I ended up with 6 smallmouth, 2 walleye. And the reason why it's so productive is because it does a really good job of imitating and suggesting that it's a crayfish. And I love it because it doesn't take a long time to tie. And when you're fishing crayfish, you have to be willing to put it where the fish are, which is in the rocks. And if you look at it from a suggestive standpoint, it's got 2 claws. These are Zonker strips. It's got your antenna, which are rubber legs. And then we have mohair for the body, plus a little bit of laser dub that's used to create the taper. And then it's tied on a 90-degree jig hook, which just makes it awesome. Very easy to move, very easy to manipulate. So, without further ado, let's get tying. All right, so let's get tying. Gamakatsu jig, 90-degree heavy hook. Size number 2. Using GSP 100 in white. And it really doesn't matter what color you use here. All right, next, going old school with some red lead eyes. I always find red works great with black. So just securing the head itself, the lead head. And as far as distance, I've got it back about a eye length or a lead eye length back from the 90 degree. I'm just going to take a minute, get this thing secured into place. There's lots of videos out there on how to do it. I'm just going to hit it with a little bit of zap, a little super glue, just basically to hold everything into position. All right, so that's good. Going to go back basically to the hook point and just stop right there. And going to use some rubber legs. I just happen to have a baggie that's stacked and packed with rubber legs, and I've got 2 here. Just going to fold them in half, bend them over, and just keep them on top of the hook here, wind down until I get right down to the end, and I'm just going to pull them down because I want those antennae to be basically angling up. All right, so I've got them into position. That looks good. Next, I'm going to use some Senyo's laser dub in black. And I'm just going to use this to create a bit of a taper. It doesn't matter if it's black. I'm trying to use a color that's going to match the fly itself because some of this will bleed through. So it's creating a taper. The other cool thing that we're able to do with this laser dub is basically keep the claws, right, which are going to be our Zonker strips, which we're going to put in next, from banging together, and they more or less stay out to the side, helping with the illusion of them being legs, or I'm sorry, claws. So next, as I mentioned, Zonker strips. I've just pulled off a section of Zonker. These are just regular, they're not Magnum. And what I want to use is about 2 times the length of the hook. So there's 1 length, pinch, 2. Now, I'm just going to give it a quick clip. It doesn't have to be precise, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I want to make sure that the other end has a large amount of material because that's going to be the claw. That looks kind of weak sauce there. I'm just going to trim. preen, see how it looks. That looks good. And now I'm just going to use the Zonker strip length here to measure it out. And it's right there. Okay, now the next cool part about creating this, the claws themselves, is really just by taking about 1/2 inch of material. You don't want to pull that off. The rest you're going to put between your thumb and your forefinger, and you're just going to pull the material off. So that's one. And now I'm going to do it for the second one. Leave about 1/2 inch. Preen, pluck. All right, all clean. Now, because I like to play with the lighter here, I'm just going to go right across. And what that does is it takes off any of the excess. It just leaves you with a nice piece of leather. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. Go right across, nice and quick. Okay, that looks good. Next, I want at least the length of the hook out. I want it out the back. So, given that illusion of the claw, and I want that angled similar to what we have with the legs themselves. So, I'm just going to do 2 loose wraps. Double check the length. That looks good. Secure it and lock. All right, I'm gonna do the exact same thing with the other claw. So I'm just gonna grab, I'm gonna make sure I have the same length out. Looks good. Gonna do 2 loose wraps, just double checking, make sure I got the length. Yes, making sure I've got the angle on both. Looks good. Now I'm going to wrap up. Doesn't matter if they spin, whatever. We're not looking for perfection. We're just creating a bit of a taper here. And I'm just going to trim the excess. Okay, again, just double checking the angle. Looks good. You can already see how the ball here is keeping the claws from connecting, which looks good. It'll keep them out to the side and help them move in the water. All right, the last material here is just called Uni Mohair. If you haven't seen it before, it's just a threaded material. It makes it look like all sorts of little legs coming off, which is very nice. So now I'm just going to lay it with the tip going back to the eye. And I'm going to walk down again to where the ball is, and that's where I'm going to stop my tying. So now I'm going to come forward, and I'm going to do a quick 1/2 hitch here. All right, so I'm going to utilize the rotary feature of my vise here. Gonna hit this with a little bit of super glue just to lock all the materials into place. Now I've got my mohair, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start walking it back. And I'm just taking my time. I don't really care if any of these materials get caught. I'm gonna come back with a brush and I'm basically going to preen them out. I'm just trying to build a taper. I went back to the eyes. I'm going to come forward. Double check, make sure my legs look good. They do. My claws look good. My antennas look good. I'm just going to finish by wrapping back. Now I'm going to do a X with the eyes, just making sure I'm getting that material in. And now I'm going to just wrap right up to the bend. Okay, looks good. There's that covered. That looks good. Double check everything before you lock everything into place. So I'm just going to come around. That's once, twice, two in front. Cinch things. Flip. And now I'm just going to preen things back. Get as much of the material out of the way as possible. And that's it. Okay. Hit that with a black Sharpie. Just to get rid. Taking a look if there's any other places on the fly where white's bleeding through. It looks nice. Gonna quick hit this with a little bit of glue. Looks good. Got my metal brush, wire brush. Just gonna pull those materials out as best I can, because really the last step here is just to trim the mohair and to create the walking legs on the crayfish. Alright, that looks nice. Tighten that enough, there we go. I'm just going to come in on the bottom, trim this off. Remember, the more hair or more material that you have hanging off the fly, the longer it takes for your pattern to sink. And when it comes to a crayfish, we want it to sink fast. You want it to get to the bottom fast. So, that looks good. Just gonna trim here. And that's it. So what you should be able to see, we've got, oh, I forgot to trim the antenna. I'm just going to trim them just a little bit longer than the legs, the claws. There we go. And that's it. Fly is very simple. Fly creates, the profile of a crayfish, which is exactly what we're looking for. The claws wiggle in the water, which is perfect. It's a quick tie, which is great, so you don't feel bad if it ends up in the rocks. And you absolutely should be fishing this in the rocks. There's a saying that I always use, which is you gotta be in it to win it, which basically means you gotta be putting your fly in the place where the fish are, and you can't be concerned about losing it. So anyway, I hope that helps you out.